When Gypsy Rose Blanchard was arrested for the brutal murder of her own mother, it looked like one of the most disturbing betrayals imaginable. A helpless, sick girl turning into a killer overnight. The headlines were simple, almost too simple: "Daughter murders mother." But the truth behind that headline was anything but simple. Because the more investigators uncovered, the more the story began to shift, and what once looked like a clear-cut crime slowly transformed into something far darker, far more complicated, and deeply unsettling. This wasn't just a murder story, it was a story about control so extreme that it erased a person's identity, about manipulation so calculated that it fooled doctors, neighbors, charities, and even entire communities for years. And at the center of it all was a girl who had never truly lived her own life. Gypsy Rose was born in 1991, and from the outside, her life seemed tragic from the very beginning. According to her mother, D.D. Blanchard, Gypsy suffered from multiple chronic illnesses, conditions so severe that they required constant care and attention. She was said to have leukemia, muscular dystrophy, epilepsy, developmental delays, and a long list of other medical issues that made her dependent on her mother for everything. She used a wheelchair, had a feeding tube, took countless medications daily, and was treated like someone who would never be able to function independently. But what made this story so convincing wasn't just the claims, it was the performance. D.D. shaved Gypsy's head to mimic chemotherapy, carried stacks of medical documents, and spoke with such confidence and detail that even trained professionals believed her. Doctors prescribed treatments. Hospitals admitted her. Organizations donated money. Strangers offered sympathy. And over time, this narrative became reality, not because it was true but because it was repeated so consistently that no one thought to question it. But behind closed doors, a completely different story was unfolding. The illnesses weren't real. The wheelchair wasn't necessary. The feeding tube wasn't needed. And the medications, many of them were unnecessary, some even harmful. This did not care, it was control. D.D. was systematically creating a false identity for her daughter, one where Gypsy was weak, dependent, and incapable of surviving on her own. This condition, known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy, is one of the most disturbing forms of abuse because it disguises itself as love. To the outside world, D.D. was a devoted mother sacrificing everything for her sick child. But she was the one causing the suffering, maintaining the illusion because it gave her attention, sympathy, and a sense of power. As Gypsy grew older, cracks began to form in that illusion. She started noticing things that didn't make sense. She realized she could move her legs. She understood conversations that others thought were beyond her mental capacity. She began to question why her life felt so restricted, why she wasn't allowed to do things other teenagers could do, why she was constantly being watched and controlled. But every time she tried to push back, she was shut down. D.D. would threaten her, manipulate her, even physically restrain her when necessary. She controlled not just Gypsy's body, but her entire perception of reality. Imagine being told your whole life that you're sick, that you're weak, that you can't survive without someone else, and then slowly realizing that everything you've been taught might be a lie. The turning point came with access to the internet. For the first time, Gypsy had a window into the real world, a place where she could explore, communicate, and exist without her mother's constant supervision. Online, she created secret identities, joined chat rooms, and began forming connections with people who saw her as a normal person, not as a patient. It was through this hidden world that she met Nicholas Gojan. Their relationship developed quickly, fueled by shared fantasies, emotional dependency, and Gypsy's desperate need for escape. To her, Nicholas wasn't just someone she liked. He represented freedom, a way out of the prison she had been trapped in for her entire life. But escape wasn't simple. Gypsy had tried to run away before, only to be brought back and punished even more severely. Her mother's control extended beyond their home. She manipulated legal systems, convinced others that Gypsy was mentally incapable, and ensured that any attempt at independence would be seen as confusion or illness. In Gypsy's mind, there was no safe way out. No authority she could trust. No system that would believe her over her mother. And that's where the idea began to change, from escaping to eliminating the source of control entirely. In June 2015, that idea became a plan. Nicholas traveled to meet Gypsy in person, and together, they decided that the only way for her to be free was for D.D. to die. It was a decision born out of years of manipulation, desperation, and a distorted understanding of reality. On the night of the murder, Nicholas entered their home while Gypsy waited, and he stabbed D.D. multiple times, ending her life in a moment that would change everything forever. Afterward, they fled, believing that they had finally escaped the nightmare. But instead of freedom, they found themselves at the center of a nationwide manhunt. When they were arrested just days later, the story initially seemed straightforward, a planned murder carried out by two individuals. But as investigators began to dig deeper, the narrative completely unraveled. Medical records didn't match the claims. Doctors admitted they had suspicions. Neighbors revealed inconsistencies. And slowly, the truth began to surface: that Gypsy had been a victim of long-term abuse, manipulation, and control that few people could even comprehend. The public reaction shifted almost overnight. The monster in the story was no longer the daughter, it was the mother. But even with that shift, the case remained deeply controversial. Because while Gypsy's suffering was undeniable, the fact remained that a life had been taken. It raised difficult questions about morality, justice, and the limits of human endurance. Can someone be both a victim and a perpetrator at the same time? Can years of abuse justify a decision as extreme as murder? And perhaps most importantly, what happens when the system fails to protect someone, leaving them to believe that violence is their only option? Gypsy eventually pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to prison, while Nicholas received a life sentence. But even now, years later, the debate continues. Some people see Gypsy as a survivor, someone who did what she believed was necessary to escape an unbearable situation. Others see her as someone who made a conscious choice to take a life, crossing a line that can never be undone. And maybe the truth lies somewhere in between. What makes this story so powerful isn't just the crime, it's the reality behind it. The idea that abuse doesn't always look like violence. Sometimes it looks like care. Sometimes it looks like sacrifice. Sometimes it hides behind smiles, sympathy, and public praise. And because of that, it can go unnoticed for years, even decades, until something forces it into the light. Because in the end, this isn't just a story about a daughter who killed her mother. It's a story about a life that was controlled from the very beginning, about a reality that was carefully constructed and maintained, about a person who was never given the chance to be free until she made a decision that changed everything. And the most unsettling part is this: if you were placed in the same situation, raised in the same environment, stripped of your identity, your freedom, and your voice, would you have found another way out? Or would you have made the same choice?